Optical Photothermal Infrared, O-PTIR, is the acronym that we like to go by. It's a new and alternative way of doing infrared spectroscopy. So infrared spectroscopy has been around for probably 100 years. It's been done dispersively, it's been done with FTIR, and your audience would be certainly familiar with FTIR. There's also these emerging QCL-based imaging techniques. But we've now come onto the scene with another way of doing infrared spectroscopy. It still generates spectra and generates infrared images, but it does so very differently. It does so not directly. The way we do it is kind of indirectly. We excite the sample with the infrared, with a quantum cascade laser, but we actually measure that indirectly via typically a green laser beam. It's another way of doing infrared spectroscopy that overcomes a lot of the traditional issues that have been faced by practitioners in this field for decades. Because of using these long wavelengths, the primary limitation here is spatial resolution. You can only measure things as small as, roughly speaking, the wavelengths of light you're dealing with. And in the mid-infrared, that's in the order of 10, 15, 20 microns in practice. So anyone doing microscopy, you're wanting to look at small things, but you're faced with this limit of this wavelength limitation, this diffraction limit. So we've overcome that by not actually measuring with the infrared. We're exciting with the infrared, but we're actually probing, detecting via this secondary beam, this probe beam, this green laser, typically green. I call this the holy grail of vibrational spectroscopy. I'm an old school vibrational FTIR guy, but still to this day, sitting there and collecting spectra and seeing infrared and Raman spectra appear simultaneously is pretty amazing. So traditional IR is really poor when it comes to working in reflection mode. So people often have to work in transmission, which means you need to section things pretty thin. That can be challenging. Often you work with this contact technique called ATR, but that requires one to touch the sample. And that introduces contamination issues, damaging the sample and or the crystal. So we work in reflection mode, but the data we generate look like they've been collected with transmission mode measurement with FTIR. So they're fully comparable and compatible with existing databases. So our focus is where our unique advantages add the most value, and that's primarily on life sciences. Cells, could be mammalian cells, you create eukaryotic cells, bacteria. Some really nice work happening with the fact that we can now image and measure from individual bacteria. Cells, tissues, live cell imaging even can be done with life sciences. We've got microplastics is probably another emerging area, and that's been around now for a while, but there's still a lot of public interest and research funding coming into it. And maybe the third, I'd say, is sort of failure analysis in the semiconductor electronic space. That black spot, what is it? It's causing an issue in the production line, and the fact that we can go in there and measure it in reflection mode without having to touch it means that we get high quality spectra that you can search against the existing databases. And that goes back to the compatibility to regular IR. So the spectra we generate are fully compatible, making that life science transition easier and smoother and bringing even more value. And so we're always upping the resolution. Just a few months ago, we released a new version of the instrument that almost doubled our resolution. So we've gone from sub-micron to sub-500. Again, for anyone in life science, that is really useful. We're adding, we're always improving speed, always improving ease of use. With, again, the idea of life science being our ultimate goal, we want this to be an easy tool to use. You should not have to be a spectroscopist or an instrument jock or a laser jock to be able to work this out. So, it's encouraging them to get feedback as to why your software is actually really easy to use.